The council may try to have this video taken down, so watch it while you can. In this video, I'm going to tell you the truth and answer your questions about the crisis at Hopwood Hall Estate in Middleton, England, and it may shock you and anger you. If this is your first time joining us and hearing about the situation, you may want to watch some of our recent videos on our YouTube channel to understand what's going on. And for those of you who have been following along, thank you for all your support and for suggesting that we start a crowdfunding page to help us with our legal expenses. There's a link directly below, and I'll also be talking more about that later in the video. So please understand, these are my experiences, my understandings, and my opinions. And with that, I'll go to your question number one. Why is Rochdale Council saying that you never submitted a business plan? True or false? This is false. On the 11th of July, 2022, I presented a business plan that I hired a professional to put together to the Rochdale Council's Middleton Township Board. And this met unanimous approval. I then took that business plan and we worked to apply for planning permission, which I then achieved a few months later in October of 2022. I have no idea why they're saying I never presented a business plan. It was also based on a 2019 viability study that I hired a top company to put together, an international company. We were also in the process of 3 different studies: a conservation management plan, a condition survey, and an options appraisal, all being performed by a professional architecture firm. And this is in addition to the master plan that was being drawn up as well, which was part of a tripartite group, which was Hopwood Hall College Corporation, Rochdale Borough Council, and the Hopwood Foundation, which I am chair of, our charity that we set up. And it didn't just stop there. There are many more reports and studies that were provided to Rochdale Borough Council that they're now claiming they never received, going all the way back to 2016 when I first presented a vision study to them that was 19 pages. Then, as mentioned, in July of 2019, I presented the viability study to them, which was 46 pages. In March of 2020, we presented them with a proposal for creating independent access to Hopwood Hall, another 12 pages. In June of 2021, we presented a business case to them, which became the basis for the business plan, and that business case was 40 pages. And then in March of 2022, I presented a follow-up proposal of 11 pages. In July of 2022 is when I presented them with the full business plan, which was 42 pages. And in July 2022 is also when I gave them the design, access, and heritage proposal, which was 15 pages. Beginning in October 2022, the master plan was commissioned and they saw drafts of that, even though it was never fully finished, but that was 70 pages. Then the options appraisal, which I mentioned, which is still in the process of being done when they locked us out, is an additional 75 pages. The conservation management plan, also in process when we were locked out, was approximately 90 pages. And the condition survey, also happening when we were locked out, was approximately 140 pages. And all along the way, the council voiced full support for these reports. Keep in mind that these studies cost a lot of money, tens and tens and tens of thousands of pounds invested into this long-term vision for Hopwood Hall. So that is approximately 575 pages of information that has been provided to Rochdale Borough Council. Yet the council went to the media and said about me, and I quote, "He's not come forward with any formal plan at all. We don't know what his end game is or what he wants to do with it." After 575 pages of information, another senior counselor who didn't want to be named said that it seems like a lot of overpromise, a lot of non-delivery. In addition to the business plan that I had presented on the 11th of July 2022, we then produced a video version for those counselors that perhaps didn't want to read the business plan. we thought, well, let's make a video version of it too, so people can just sit down and watch it in 8 minutes. So we produced that, and I emailed that personally to every single counselor that I had an email address to, and also some of the key staff at Rochdale Borough Council, Hopwood Hall College, and Rochdale Development Agency. So I think it was about between 60 to 70 people that I individually emailed. It wasn't a group email, it was individual emails. Went to every single one of those people. Now, I don't know. People just are acting like they never received it. I don't know, but I have all the emails to prove that it was sent to them. It's also on our YouTube channel with tens of thousands of views. I think it has over 30,000 views, 40,000 views, something like that. So if 40,000 people out there have watched our video business plan, why are people at Rochdale Council saying they don't know of any business plan? And for those of you who are interested in watching the video, there is a link down below. Additionally, I should add that the business plan, which I personally funded and was presented to the township board, that meeting, those minutes that we went looking for have disappeared. Now, in our November public meeting of last year, one of the former counselors stood up in public and acknowledged the fact that he was at that meeting and that it did in fact happen and that those minutes did disappear.
The video you saw before the presentation that Hopwood gave in 2022 about his business plan, I was there. He was there. He was there. Paul, wherever Paul is. Several members of this audience tonight were there at that presentation, seeing the vision, hearing the man speak. Members of Rochdale Cabinet who voted bringing this situation about were also there. They commended the plan. They commended the man. So to find out what's happened now is just ridiculous.
Thank you, Bernard. And the weirdest thing about this to me is I went online to find the minutes of that meeting.
You won't find them.
They aren't there.
So it's also good to know there are very good counselors at Rochdale Council. This is not everybody. Not everybody's telling mistruths and misinformation. It's just a few people over there pulling the strings, creating this unusual situation, and we don't understand it. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know why they're not being transparent, but the people that have stood up and said that they were there, that they know what happened, many counselors have said they weren't even aware of this decision being made behind closed doors to renege on our agreement, and also counselors encouraging us to keep continuing forward. So that said, not everybody is behind this at Rochdale Council or Hopwood Hall College or Rochdale Development Agency. I just want to be clear about that. But there are a few out there, like every situation, and you just have to rise up. You just have to rise above and know that the good people out there will succeed. Why is there no public access to Hopwood Hall? Well, this is a major issue that goes back about 3 decades, way before I was involved, and a lot of the people in the community were involved. And it really deserves a video of its own to really explain it because it's so complex. But basically, it goes back to when Rochdale Council took ownership of Hopwood Hall in the late 1980s, early 1990s. They then gave the land around Hopwood Hall to Hopwood Hall College Corporation to form the new college. And at the time, they decided, now it's unclear to me whether the council wanted to keep Hopwood Hall or the college didn't want Hopwood Hall, but depending on who you ask, somehow it was decided amongst those people involved back then that they were going to draw a line around Hopwood Hall, and basically Hopwood Hall College would then surround the hall. So it left the hall in a very precarious situation where access was not really allowed by the college, and so the public access was shut off or closed off. Now, there's a lot of questions around if this was the right thing to do, if they actually could do this, or why or how this was done. But the point is, if we look back, the public access was cut off, and people were told they could not visit the hall. So there were numerous attempts by other people over those 30 years to try to do something with Hopwood Hall, all of which failed due to the lack of access and lack of funding due to the fact they couldn't get access. Now, this is what I'm told. So this is when, under Rochdale Borough Council's ownership, the hall then simply just started to fall into decline. Not much money was put into it. It wasn't watched over in the way it should. Vandals broke in. It just basically fell into complete disrepair on the watch of Rochdale Borough Council. And really, Hopwood Hall College is right there. They're the closest neighbor. I mean, between those two organizations, it's shocking to think that this was just the hall, this historic 600-year-old building, dates back to the 1420s, perhaps even earlier, was just allowed to fall into complete disrepair. So the access, we've been fighting for years, and it's been a dream of ours to bring back public access to Hopwood Hall. Now, in the media, Rochdale Borough Council put out some false information, making it seem like our business plan didn't cover public access, and that's just not true. It's completely false. We've always dreamed of restoring public access, bringing in both private funding and grants, and making this something really special for the community and for visitors from far and wide. So the access to Hopwood Hall has been blocked, and even though we wanted to get in there to do work with our volunteer team and our team of heritage experts, it was a real challenge to work with the college to try to get access, and especially whenever we wanted to have a public event, it was quite challenging, and it was really difficult to do. But given that the land was given to Hopwood Hall College by taxpayers, right? This is taxpayer land that the council owned, and then it was gifted to create Hopwood Hall College. The question is, why over those 30 years hasn't public access been established to give back to the community that gave to the college? So this is something I've been fighting for years, since I first got involved. Now, the college may try to tell you that it's because they need to safeguard their students. And of course, we want the students to be safe, that's paramount. But there is a solution that has been proposed numerous times to the college, which is also included in the master plan. The way that the hall is situated on the property, there is a way to separate the hall from the students so that the students can remain protected and safe in their own areas on campus, and visitors can come and enjoy the hall. And it really baffles me why this has not been allowed to move forward, both from Hopwood Hall College Corporation, but also Rochdale Borough Council. Now, as I understand it, Rochdale Borough Council gives funding to Hopwood Hall College. For instance, here's a budget showing nearly £5 million earmarked by Rochdale Council for Hopwood Hall College. And here again is a reference to £5 million committed by Rochdale Council to help develop the college. So why don't they just say, look, if you want to get more funding, college, then work out the public access and make this heritage asset available to the very community who gave the land to you? Why isn't it that simple? Why has this not happened? I couldn't figure it out, and I pushed and fought for this. Maybe that's one of the reasons that people at the college didn't want it to succeed. I don't really know, but we felt really passionate about this, and especially talking to so many people in the community who have been crying out for access to their heritage for decades. And so I pushed, and finally we got the council and the college to agree to form a tripartite group between Rochdale Borough Council, Hopwood Hall College Corporation, and Hopwood Foundation Charity, which is the charity which I helped co-found and am the chair. And that's a registered charity in England. And so we all decided to sit down and come up with a master plan and hire professional architects to create a master plan that would have an overview and find a new route of access that would go around the college using one of the original carriage entrances to access the hall. Now you can see this in our video about the vision for Hopwood Hall, which is down below in the link. So this study was commissioned at the end of, I think it was October of 2022, around that time. And it was supposed to be concluded in early 2023, really by March of 2023. I think it was supposed to be even earlier than that, but it kept getting pushed out. Numerous meetings were had, lots of discussions, lots of drafts of this master plan were created and approved at the council and the college, and we kept moving it forward, but for some reason it was never actually getting the sign off. And the college kept saying this has to go before the Board of Governors at Hopwood Hall College, and the council kept saying this has to go before the cabinet to sign off. So speed up years, the study that was supposed to take a few months ends up being really, now we're in 2025. So you're talking 2.5 years later, a study that was supposed to just take a few months is still not completed. So Rochdale Council goes into the media and says they don't want to go further with me or our community volunteers or team of heritage experts any further because we're not making enough progress fast enough. Okay, but we are not the ones that have been delaying this master plan for public access to get the community and visitors into Hopwood Hall. We have been pushing and pushing and pushing for all these years to get it, but yet this study has been delayed. Now, a few years ago, you might remember there was a proposal for a zoo to go in by one of Hopwood Hall College's instructors was leading the Forge to do this, and that suddenly that was getting approvals left and right, and people were going to sit down and meet so much faster than what they were willing to do with the heritage and public access to Hopwood Hall. So why is that? Why was this zoo idea suddenly given the fast track when we've been here working for years and really pouring our hearts and souls into making this happen? Why did the zoo get pushed to the front of the line? Is it because it was an instructor at Hopwood Hall College? Is it because of the relationships that happened there? And the other thing we're asking is, how are these buildings and structures that were built by Hopwood Hall College right around Hopwood Hall, many of them were not even given planning permission, right next to a grade 2 star listed building, encroaching on the heritage setting and really just being heritage suffocation. But nobody stopped them at the council. Nobody really said much. So Hopwood Hall College just continued to build up and around the hall, the historic hall. This, of course, upset the community. And when Hopwood Hall College went to try to get planning permission for those structures that they built right around the hall, and I understand some of them were even on the land that didn't belong to the college but belonged rightfully to the hall, they built those on that land. They tried to get planning permission retrospectively. The community got very upset. They had hundreds and hundreds of complaints to the planning department. Now, I understand this is something I'm told the college is mad at me about, or got mad at me because they think that I complained. It's the community. The community has been deserving answers in public access for 30 years. This predates me. I wrote a letter asking that why wouldn't the college just wait to get the master plan done that we had commissioned in 2022 and paid for, some of which with public money, again, taxpayer money. I think it was £15,000 of taxpayer money went toward this master plan. So why wouldn't the college just wait and incorporate the changes they wanted to make and these buildings that they erected around the grade 2 star listed building that they were trying to push through under the radar? Why wouldn't they just make that part of the master plan? And why is it happening this way? Because really those buildings that are encroaching on the heritage setting probably, and especially on the ones that we think are on the land owned by the hall, some of those are probably going to have to be removed. And in fact, the college later applied for planning permission to demolish some of those buildings that they built right next to the hall. So now that we've been thrown out and locked out of the hall, I wonder if those buildings have actually been demolished, or was that another motivation for them to get rid of us so that they wouldn't have to demolish those buildings? Lots and lots of questions, lots and lots of answers that are needed, but that brings you at least up to speed with what I know, and as I understand it, there's still more to figure out and more information we need to really fully get the big picture here. Can you explain the relationship between Rochdale Borough Council, Rochdale Development Agency, and Hopwood Hall College? I don't know if I can explain that because I don't fully understand it myself. It is very confusing, and when you try to look into it, it isn't very transparent, in my opinion. So as I understand it, Rochdale Council started a separate third-party entity called Rochdale Development Agency. And that is to do the work of the council. I guess it's wholly owned by Rochdale Council, but yet it's a third party. So they're able to get around certain rules and regulations. I'm not really sure that I understand how it all works. And I've asked a number of people, and it's not a typical structure, government structure. As I understand it, in Greater Manchester, there's 10 boroughs, and Rochdale Borough is one of the few ones that actually have this structure where they have this development agency that advises and works for or with the council. But it's quite confusing because how does a third-party development agency then have influence over a council and taxpayer dollars and how all of that works? To add another layer onto this is the CEO of Hopwood Hall College is actually a director of Rochdale Development Agency. So how all that works and how that is or isn't a conflict of interest, I don't fully understand it. But if you've got Hopwood Hall College CEO as a director of Rochdale Development Agency then has influence over Rochdale Borough Council and taxpayers' money, and then Rochdale Borough Council is also giving money to Hopwood Hall College. It's just sort of a big circle. And I'm not sure that I understand it, and I would love to understand it. If anybody out there can explain it to me, I really think that there needs to be some sort of deep investigation into not only the decision of what happened with Hopwood Hall and this whole tragic situation within the community, but what actually is really going on. How are these three entities working together? Where is the public money going? Who are the consultants that they're hiring? I know in the media they've said, well, we've hired a consultant, we paid a consultant £100,000 to do a study. Some experts that I've talked to said that's way too much to be paying for that. So where is that money going? How much money is being paid? Who, put a name to who are the consultants that are actually being paid this money? Is it the Rochdale Development Agency? It's just so confusing and not transparent. And this is why we're going for this freedom of information that's been denied not once but twice by Rochdale Council. Why is this not transparent? Why are they not answering these questions? Why are they calling it the consultant rather than putting a name to it? Why are they not coming forward and giving explanations about all of this? And like I said, this extends much further, much deeper than just our situation at Hopwood Hall. I've heard people throughout the community complaining on numerous issues, numerous concerns. So it would be good to understand what is going on behind closed doors. And I think the only way we're going to get there, if they don't issue this freedom of information, is a full investigation of all three of those entities. What was written in the contract that was signed between you and Rochdale Council? Well, that's a very good question, and a lot of people have asked this. And I did talk about it before at our public meeting. So the council specified what we needed to turn Hopwood Hall into, and that was a specialty event and hospitality venue with accommodation and a potential training facility for students. So when I signed that in 2017, we set off on a mission to achieve our contractual duties with Rochdale Council. We did everything in our power to move that forward, and I have to say we made tremendous progress considering for 30 years Rochdale Council let the hall just sit there and fall into complete dereliction, whereas for us, in just a number of years, we got the hall open and up and running. We had events, we had training workshops, we had students in there, we had local schools, we had a gardening club, a restoration club, an archive club, landed funding. I mean, we were doing everything, coming up with plans to address the major issues around it, doing studies, architectural drawings, just looking at every possible angle that we needed to do to make the building safe and accessible. So we were achieving everything we set out to do to deliver what they told us we needed to deliver. Now, what was in the contract, it just says we need to achieve planning permission, which we did in October of 2022. Now, even though I did finance a business plan and we did present that, nowhere in the contract does it actually say we need to do that. So we were going above and beyond by delivering the business plan. All that it says is that we need to achieve planning permission, and now it will just be up to the judge or court or whatever is going to happen here as we progress forward. And it's really just going to come down to what is in the contract and the interpretation of the contract. But we feel, my legal team, that we achieved everything we set out to do, that we ticked all the boxes of what was part of that agreement, and that indeed we should be able to progress with our project as signed in 2017. What legal protections do you have against the actions of Rochdale Borough Council? Well, our legal team has a number of things in the works. First of all, they think that Rochdale Borough Council has been unlawful, as well as the Hopwood Hall College Corporation. But what I will tell you is last August, after Rochdale Development Agency canceled a meeting with myself and the Hopwood Foundation, and also canceled the lunch that we had set up to discuss going forward, we became a bit concerned. They said they would get back to us, this Rochdale Development Agency said they would get back to us by the end of September and asked us to write up a proposal of how we thought we could work together with them, which we did. I worked with my board of trustees at the charity, and we put together a package and emailed that over, and really had high hopes of continuing our partnership with Rochdale Borough Council. One of the main things I will tell you, though, that we did request in the email that we sent to Rochdale Development Agency was that there would be full transparency, that our charitable foundation would have full view of any budgets, how money was being spent, who was being hired, really to be able to know what was going on behind the scenes, as any charity should know and any board of trustees deserves to know. We didn't hear back from them, and that was a bit strange. And then they said they needed more time, and then they said they were going to be in touch with National Lottery, who had given us the grant, that we were talking with them about how this money was going to be spent. As time ticked on, it became October, and they weren't really responding in any major way. We started to get a little bit concerned. And so at that point, I hired a legal team, and they reached out to Rochdale Borough Council numerous times, and they weren't getting the answers that they needed. So as my agreement, the option to purchase agreement that I signed in 2017, as that became close to its extension ending, which was on the 31st of October 2024, as we approached that date and we weren't hearing back from the council or Rochdale Development Agency, my legal team said, well, you should exercise the option to purchase it, considering you've achieved what you said you would in the agreement. And if they're going to pull something strange here, then at least if you exercise the agreement, you'll have some sort of protection in going forward. Now, if they come back and it was just an honest mistake and they've been busy and they want to continue to work together, well, then we could withdraw that option to purchase that we had exercised. But they said to be safe, let's just do it because you never really know what's going on behind the scenes. So I did just a few days before the end of October 2024 and before the extension for the option to purchase agreement came to an end. We legally exercised that option to purchase Hopwood Hall based on the fact that I had achieved planning permission in October of 2022. So, what legal protections do we have? We have quite a bit, actually. We adhered to the rules of the contract, what was in writing. We did everything as it should be. So now there is a legal question of who actually owns the hall. And that will probably have to be decided by a court, a judge, or somebody, depending on how this progresses. Okay, the next question is, what happened to the 250,000 pounds from National Lottery? Well, this is tragic and upsets me even just talking about it. But so you know, my sister's a professional grant writer in the United States, and she helped on this tremendously. So she and I, along with some members of our team here in the UK, worked on this grant for 2.5 years, maybe even over 2.5 years, applying to National Lottery Heritage Fund for 250,000 pounds for community engagement. This is an incredibly competitive grant to go for, which is why it took so long to get it, because not only was it just writing over those 2.5 years, but it was multiple meetings, multiple drafts, lots of consultation with National Lottery Heritage Fund, talking with consultants, and really, really putting in the thought, because we wanted to get this money for the hall and for the community. Now, the 250,000 pounds was to make the hall safe and accessible so that the community could finally come in on a regular basis. We're going to open a gift shop where we could have local artists be able to sell their wares and local food available. And we're going to have tours and a mini cine theater where local school groups or people interested in the history of Hopwood Hall could come and watch videos about the history that our archive club have compiled and we put together in a way that was engaging and entertaining. So we had lots of plans for this, and to get temporary floors down throughout the hall in areas that people normally couldn't go in, to get everything up and running and stabilized. So even though the hall wasn't finished, people could go in maybe with a hard hat, but still see it safely and could access it by people of all abilities or disabilities. This was our dream, to get this open. And then also to have training workshops there and teach students and people looking for job opportunities, and really to make it the community hub that we've been dreaming about. Also to hire 3 new positions to work for the Hopwood Foundation charity, one of which was going to be a fundraiser, a person that would focus on the both private and grant funding that would be coming in to help make this dream a reality, and a project manager to oversee the whole project, and then a community engagement officer who was going to work with the community and groups and schools and figure out ways to involve people and bring them in. Now, we got the grant awarded in November of 2023, and that's really when the issues began with the Rochdale Development Agency, a consultant who had been hired over there to oversee the process. And that's where it really started to fall apart. It really started to unravel because they had different ideas, or she had different idea of how she wanted the money to be spent, or where it was going to be spent, or who was going to be funded. That it wouldn't go to necessarily help the charity, that maybe some of that funding would go to other consultants that they hired or to Rochdale Development Agency itself. So there was a lot of questions about it, and not really much that was acceptable in my opinion and my Board of Trustees' opinion. We just felt that the way they were going about it was really not in the spirit of the way the grant was written. And so that's really where problems started. But we didn't think it was anything we couldn't work through. We thought, Rochdale Council is our partner and has been our long-term partner for many years. And so with this consultant from Rochdale Development Agency coming in, we just thought we'd be able to work past it and figure out a way to make it work, and that no one would ever dream of wanting to lose this 250,000 pounds for the community. But that's exactly what happened. The Rochdale Development Agency and Rochdale Council, as I understand it from National Lottery Heritage Fund, were contacted, and they said that the council said there was no possibility of any agreement being reached between the Hopwood Foundation charity and them. So unfortunately, that left National Lottery Heritage Fund without any choice but to withdraw the 250,000 pounds that was going for community engagement. So very, very upsetting. So much work and so much expense, personal expense that I paid for, as well as my time, my sister's time, our volunteers' time. And so much went into this. But it was an important step, because if we get that grant, it really leads to further grants. So the fact that that was torpedoed by Rochdale Council and the consultant at Rochdale Development Agency was really upsetting. And now you hear in the news, the council says, oh, we found money, we're going to be spending this money and that money. But what they're not being honest about is that this money, 250,000 pounds, has been lost. And we had another grant on top of that that was the Hopwood Foundation applied for, that we got for 100,000 pounds to replace windows, leaded glass windows, and train students to put in windows in the hall. And we don't know if that's lost or not. We haven't gotten the final word on that. But so that would be 350,000 pounds lost. What are the health and safety issues that Rochdale Council says you caused? Well, first of all, please know that we take health and safety very seriously. And in the 5 years of our community engagement volunteer program, we did not have even one incident. We went above and beyond, and we're very careful about this, and had a full suite of policies for health and safety and safeguarding. We also regularly had CPR training, we purchased a defibrillator, and we had experts come in and advise us on things such as potential asbestos removal and disabled access, because we wanted to be able to get people of all abilities into the hall. So for the council to say that we somehow violated health and safety doesn't make any sense. What I think might have happened is they saw this as a way to come back at us and try to challenge us and try to make our lives difficult and try to paint a picture of us in a negative light, that perhaps we weren't doing our jobs or weren't doing what we should be doing when they went to the media. So I think this probably was a setup, a build-up where they came in, they looked around at the derelict building that fell into dereliction on their watch, and then pointed a finger at us, at me, saying we hadn't done our duty to take the building from being derelict and make it safe. The council always knew it was going to be a phased approach. You can't just take a building that's falling down, that they owned and fell down while they owned it, and suddenly snap your fingers and turn it around and make it 100% safe overnight. We knew this was going to take years, they knew it, and we were working together in partnership to make that happen. This is one of the main reasons we applied to National Lottery Heritage Fund for a 250,000 pound grant to make the hall safe and accessible. And had that grant not been stopped, halted, torpedoed, we would already have all that work done. That would have been done in 2024. The hall would have been made safe and accessible. People would have been able to visit. Everything that we needed to do to get it to a point where it would be very safe would be done. So it's strange that we now sit here in 2025 and people continue to point fingers at us saying we never made the hall what it could be. I have also heard that members of the public have applied for freedom of information from Rochdale Council, requesting the details of their accusations of our violations of health and safety. And I've heard and actually seen a message that went to one of those people within the community stating that they don't hold any evidence. So it will be interesting to see what the council produces to prove that we were somehow in breach of our health and safety obligations. How are the volunteers doing, and how is the hall? Well, First of all, on November 8th, 2024, when Rochdale Borough Council, Rochdale Development Agency, and Hopwood Hall College Corporation locked us out, it was an absolute shock. And as you might know, many of our volunteers come to us because they're focused on their mental health and well-being. Obviously, doing this lockout in such a dramatic fashion for people who had put the last almost 5 years of their life, poured their hearts and soul into this, donating 28,000 hours is what it's estimated that the volunteers put in on the gardens and other areas of the hall. To lock them out in such a way without consulting them or talking to me or the foundation, but just doing it in such a dramatic fashion was so wrong. And it really upset a lot of the volunteers. It sent them into depression. It really messed with their mental health and well-being. It absolutely was not a good time and not a good space to be in. So my heart goes out to all of those volunteers, those hardworking, dedicated volunteers who absolutely did not deserve this sort of treatment by Rochdale Borough Council, Rochdale Development Agency, or Hopwood Hall College Corporation. But we've done our best. We've continued to talk with the volunteers on a regular basis and meet with them. We've hosted some parties and events, just get-togethers for them. We had an amazing get-together where everybody was able to just relax. We've also had a few pizza parties that Boyd and Pam have so kindly hosted at their home. And then very recently, we've just launched a new program which is focused on education, art, and culture, and that is taking the volunteers to other sites. So even though we're locked out of Hopwood Hall, we're able to go and visit other historical sites, historical homes, museums, heritage sites, gardens, really look around and continue to be able to learn and engage with each other and maintain these important friendships and get outside, get active, get some sunshine, and really just keep a positive spirit and a hope for the future. Now, as far as how the hall is doing, we don't know because we've been locked out of Hopwood Hall, and the Hopwood Hall College Corporation issued a letter forbidding us to step foot on their property to try to access the hall. So it's hard to know what's going on at the hall. As we went into winter last year, we numerous times tried to contact Rochdale Borough Council. We contacted them on social media. We were really trying to make sure that they were going to watch out for Hopwood Hall and make sure the water was off. I mean, the way they locked us out, they didn't give us any warning. So we didn't have a chance to prepare for winter. The gardening club didn't have a chance to put away plants or put bulbs in the greenhouse or do any of those things that you normally would do going into winter to prepare for what was a very heavy, cold, wet winter. So the hall was really left to the elements on its own. We didn't have a chance to prepare one bit, as I said. So we don't know the condition of the hall. I have heard reports from people that are allowed on campus at Hopwood Hall College that it's not good, that things are looking shabby, that the grass that the volunteers spent so many hours saving and bringing back and restoring back to its beautiful green growth, that's just been overtaken by moles and it looks terrible. Some of the furniture that had been donated and placed on the terrace at the hall, that's just been thrown into a heap on the gardens and in the lawn. So hearing that and it's upsetting, because it doesn't seem like the council is taking any care. It's just letting the hall go back to rack and ruin the same way that it was. We've heard reports that there's items missing. Perhaps they were moved. We don't know. But it's not good. And it doesn't seem like anybody, to me, it doesn't seem like anybody at the council actually cares in the same way that we care and the community cares and the volunteers care, you know, how many days we showed up there on a regular basis, just contributing our own time and resources and funding and everything. It's really sickening. It's really sickening, and it's just downright wrong the way this has been handled. What can we do to help? Well, thank you so much for asking. Wow, you guys really have done an incredible job already just with your amazing kindness and comments and support. It really means so much. And I know 5,500 of you, more than 5,500 of you, have signed our petition, which is great and sends a signal to Rochdale Borough Council, Rochdale Development Agency, and Hopwood Hall College Corporation. Please keep in mind if you do sign that signature on the petition, that sometimes it pops up and asks for money, and that's not funding that we're asking for. That funding is going to change.org rather than to our battle. But some of you have asked how you can contribute to our battle, and some of you have given to our legal fees, which has been so appreciated. As I mentioned, it's going to be a long and expensive battle, and some of you have given major amounts, which is really it's just so needed and so helpful and keeps us going. And if you'd like to be part of that and giving to our crowdfunding, the link is below. You can contact Give, Send, Go, and it'll bring you to our page. And all those funds that are raised will be 100% transparent where they're going to legal fees and professional fees associated with the legal battle. We really appreciate it because this is going to be something that is going to take a bit, but we're going to get there. So thank you for all your support. It just comes from the bottom of my heart that so many of you have contacted me and messaged me and just sent the well wishes to all of us, and it keeps our spirits buoyant, keeps us going, keeps us fighting. We're going to keep fighting. We're not giving up. We will take this to the end. Truth will come out. Truth will prevail, and Hopwood Hall will be saved. So thank you for all your support, encouragement, and ongoing oomph. Thank you.